Okay, let's get to our main subject. Let's get to the bombshell. Not really a bombshell, actually, but it does regard Shohei Ohtani, and it relates to the Mariners. So Jeff Passan wrote an article this week. It's on ESPN Plus. If you have ESPN Plus, you can go read it. But just listing some of the things he's hearing out there on the free agent market. And there is a paragraph. There are a couple sentences that relate to the Mariners. So talking about Shohei Ohtani, here's the paragraph we tweeted out from his article. He says, ultimately about Ohtani, this will come down to Ohtani's priorities on where he's going to sign. If it's money, nobody has more than the New York Mets owner Stephen Cohen. If it's resonance in Japan, no relationship between team and player matches that of the Seattle Mariners and Ichiro Suzuki. Although, he puts in parentheses, though the notion that the Mariners will pay top dollar for Ohtani simply is not real at the moment. That is an issue, Lyle.
Okay, I'm going to try and stay calm for as long as I possibly can on this segment. We can time me for how long I stay tame. I'm going to preface this by saying we know that the Mariners do not leak sources out there. They're very good about keeping information close to the vest and in-house. So what reporters really, really know about what the Mariners' plans are for Ohtani is probably limited, especially because there was a report that came out today here on Thursday saying there were some reports about if Ohtani takes a meeting with a team and it gets leaked out there by the team that happened, he will hold that against them. Against that team. He does not want information about certain meetings he's taking with certain teams to get out there in the public. That is something the Mariners did not do well last time. Everybody knew it happened. This time they're keeping information much more in-house about it. They won't talk about it, which we talked about a couple episodes ago. So I'm going to start with that. I'm going to start by saying information's probably being kept in-house. Mariners don't want things to get out there. How much do reporters really know? We don't know. Although Passan is very plugged in. That's the other part of this. But if this is true, yeah, I'm going to turn this back to you because, I'm going to try to stay tame for as long as I can about this. That is a real problem if this is true.
You understand going into this offseason what it's going to cost to land Shohei Ohtani. Like, you can't preface it that you want to sign Shohei Ohtani and then be unwilling to do what it takes to sign Shohei Ohtani. It's very well that Shohei Ohtani might not need the total dollar amount. He might not need the biggest amount. That's fine. What might worry me is not only would they not be willing to pay top dollar, where if they were to offer a 12-year contract, it would not be as much as Steve Cohen and the Mets, or as much as the Texas Rangers, or as much as the LA Dodgers. I'm concerned that also means they're not offering him the years he wants. Like, I could not think going into this offseason that you could get away with trying to offer Shohei like a 7 or 8 year contract. I just don't understand how that would make sense when you realize you have a once in a generation opportunity to sign a player of this caliber, and he lays out these benchmarks of what he wants, and you wouldn't meet them. Because what Passan wrote makes it sound like they're unwilling to meet some benchmarks that he has, which is an issue. If you want to sign him, meet the fucking benchmarks, dude. That's why free agents are free agents, so they can negotiate. And when you don't meet their negotiations, then they won't sign there. And you want to wonder why nobody signs in Seattle.
Okay, let's just rip the Band-Aid off because you're getting into it. If they're seriously not going to offer him top dollar, that's just straight up unacceptable. Because here's what the Mariners do not have that other teams have. The Mariners do not have, a rich history of success, playoff appearances, World Series rings, or an A-plus reputation. And oh, by the way, that is all on top of the fact that just less than 2 months ago, you had players from within the organization publicly rip ownership and the front office about lack of aggression and spending. And I guarantee you, Shohei heard those comments, or somebody in his camp did. So somebody heard those. And between all of that combined, the Mariners are already at a disadvantage. Again, like I've said, I think they are in this thing. I think they're in the sweepstakes, but they are at a disadvantage for all of those reasons. So what are you selling Shohei on to come here? It better start with paying him top dollar. It has to start there, because if you don't, you have gone from being an underdog in this thing to not even being at the table. Like, I really, really hope this is not true. And I hope this is just speculation, and in-house, the Mariners are planning something different. But if they're serious about this, and they are not willing to go out and try and acquire the best business asset in all of baseball, if you want to look at it from an ownership perspective, a guy that will double you your profits from what you try and spend on him, then what are we doing here? What are we doing?
You don't become a billionaire by being stupid. Let me lead off with that. You don't. John Stanton did not get as rich as he did by being stupid. You have to make calculated decisions with your business, with your life, that affect all of these things to grow your profit and understand your business model, and understand what works. What about looking at Shohei Ohtani and what he has brought into the Los Angeles Angels, which you could hire people to figure out how much money the Los Angeles Angels are making on Shohei Ohtani? Let me give you a hint. It's a fuck ton of money that they're making on Shohei Ohtani. You can have your people go in there and look and see how much money they're making. And I don't understand that coming back to you and you realizing and still thinking that investing money in a product that will return to you significantly more wouldn't be worth it. I don't get that. And you know what I also don't like, Lyle? I also don't like some of the notions that have been coming out in the last week. The fact that the names that we've heard from Shohei Ohtani, whether how legitimate they are or not, but they are whispers floating around, and they've probably entered and left Shohei's camp in some capacity. How are the Mariners supposed to compete if the names getting thrown around are the Texas Rangers and the Atlanta Braves? What do the Mariners have to offer against those teams? Like what? They won't outspend those teams. They don't have a win. Those two teams have won the World Series in the last 3 years. They can't offer that. They can't offer a promise to try and win because they haven't shown that either. Like, what are they like? You can't do anything if you're competing against that. So if that's what Shohei's looking at, like, you half-assing it doesn't, like, you have, like, literally would have no chance if that's the case.
The number one way to take yourself out of these sweepstakes is to not pay him what he is asking to be paid. And again, you want to go listen to past podcast episodes from a year ago with how the Mariners approached the offseason? I was much more on board. I understood not overpaying for Turner. I understood not overpaying for Bogarts. I understood not overpaying for Correa and guys like that. Because, one, I thought that the process they took at the time was okay. They had a good offense the year prior. And my thought this whole time has been, they are saving for this. They are planning for this. They're gearing up for this. That the reason they weren't spending all those previous off seasons is they are allocating funds to give Shohei what he wants. And now we're hearing rumblings that, they're not going to pay him top dollar. If you're not going to pay that guy top dollar, who are you going to pay top dollar to? The answer is nobody. If Shohei chooses to go to the Dodgers, if the Mariners put their best foot forward, make a great sales pitch, do everything they can, and offer him the money he is looking for. But ultimately he says, I would rather stay in Southern California. I'd rather play with the Dodgers. This is my choice. I would be upset. I'd be devastated, but that is his choice. You cannot force him to play here. But if we hear that the Mariners are not willing to give it everything it takes, like, then again, what are we doing? Like, what are we wasting our time on? Like, yeah, like, man, John Stanton really does live rent free in my head, like, all the time. I swear. It's, yeah.
If the Mariners are unwilling to pay top dollar, then fans should also not pay top dollar. Like, that's it. Like, that's how it rolls. And if that public information becomes public and it comes out, fans should absolutely not pay top dollar if that's the case. There's one other concerning thing I would say, kind of related to the offseason and strategizing, Lyle. It ties into this because this is concerning, and this was regarding Juan Soto. I mean, more from Jeff Passan. So he was talking about the Juan Soto trade, and about the Padres' payroll issues and saying, well, trading Juan Soto is the only logical solution to the Padres' payroll issue. Passan says the Yankees, Cubs, and Mariners have what the Padres want in near MLB-ready starting pitching, but he said Chicago and Seattle would likely not trade those pitchers. So, we can either think about this in a baseball sense, which is what Jerry thinks in, of not wanting to trade his young pitchers for 1 year of Juan Soto. But then you can flip it around and say, okay, well, we've also talked about at some point it doesn't matter anymore because you need to win and you need to prove to your players that you care. And from that report, it sounds like the Mariners would not trade what is necessary for Juan Soto. Slight less level of concern because it's not a consensus on this podcast whether or not the Mariners should trade for him. But with that report, doesn't sound like they would be willing to break the bank for a great hitter.
I am less heartbroken about that than I would about Ohtani. Because again, it is a risk. What if Juan Soto was traded for a haul, got to Seattle, they missed the playoffs again, and then obviously he's walking in free agency. He's walking in free agency no matter what. So what if it was a total disaster, and then due to that, you lose Brian Wu, who goes and pitches at the front of San Diego's rotation for the next 6 years? Like, that would be kind of a tough pill to swallow. So again, like, would I like Juan Soto to play for the Mariners? Sure. Yeah. I also know it would only be 1 year because he's going to hit free agency and probably leave. And that costs prospects. Like, trading for a guy like that costs a lot. The reason this is such an issue with Shohei, you do not have to give up prospects. You do not have to sacrifice one single player on your team. It is money and money alone. And money that you have not spent in offseason after offseason now. And I can't stress this enough. I figured this was the plan all along. But if they're not going to shell out what it takes to get Ohtani, then I don't know what in the world we're doing.
I guess we'll have to see. Don't you love the offseason, Lau? So
I do.
Think about it this way. Well, we have about 2 weeks until winter meetings. And Shohei should sign before then. From, I guess, everything that we heard, he's supposed to sign before then. So buckle up.
Yeah. Look, I hope we come back on this podcast in a couple weeks and retract everything we just said. I hope in 2 weeks we're on here singing John Stanton's praises. If John Stanton signed Shohei Ohtani, I won't say a bad word about him for like a decade. Like, I swear. Like, if he goes and shells out the money and lands Ohtani, you won't hear me say his name in bad light ever again. But I really hope this report is just a report and the Mariners are planning to do something different, because to not even try to pay him top dollar, you're not giving yourselves a chance.